All right, so are you ready to unlock the secrets to speaking English fluently?
I think everyone's ready for that.
I know I am. We're going to be diving deep into this guide, 9 secrets to speaking English fluently and easily.
Sounds good to me.
And hopefully we'll be able to break down the techniques that'll help anyone reach fluency.
Yeah, because who doesn't want a cheat sheet for fluency?
Exactly. Cut through the clutter, get right to what works.
And what I think is really cool about this guide is that it's not your typical textbook stuff.
Oh, really?
It's like it dives into the mindset
Oh, wow.
and the strategies you need to actually make it happen in the real world.
So it's not all about just memorizing verb conjugations and all that.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's jump right into the first secret then, embracing the learner's mindset.
Okay?
Sounds pretty basic, but what does that actually look like, in practice?
It's all about seeing those stumbles, those fumbles, those inevitable mistakes as like opportunities to learn.
Okay.
Instead of like beating yourself up over them.
Yeah.
Like imagine you're learning to play a really complex piece of music on the piano.
Oh, gosh.
You wouldn't expect to just nail it on the first try, would you?
Definitely not. I'd be hitting all the wrong notes, probably.
Exactly. And each one of those like mistakes, they're giving you valuable feedback. They're telling you, okay, adjust your technique here, and eventually you'll get to that flawless performance.
I like that analogy a lot.
And language is so similar.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time you kind of mess up, you're actually gaining these insights into how this amazing language works.
That's true.
I remember when I was learning Italian,
Oh, yeah.
I kept using the wrong preposition for this one particular sentence structure.
Oh, gosh.
And it was so frustrating. But instead of giving up, I decided to really analyze it, like what was going on there. And you know what? I ended up discovering this subtle little nuance that I had completely missed before.
Oh, wow.
And my understanding of prepositions just like skyrocketed after that.
That's a perfect example of how just reframing those mistakes can lead to these breakthroughs.
Totally.
But how can someone listening actually cultivate this learner's mindset? Like, what are some practical things they can do?
Well, this guide actually gives a couple of really good practical methods.
Okay.
One is to start a progress journal.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just take a few minutes each day to jot down what you've learned, maybe what went well, what you struggled with.
Okay.
Because then when you look back and you see how far you've come, it's incredibly motivating.
I love that. I love the progress journal idea because it's like a tangible record of your growth.
Yes.
Especially on those days where you feel like, I'm not getting anywhere. You can look back and be like, wow, I've come a long way.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. What about rewarding yourself for those wins, even the small ones? Does that tie into this?
Oh, absolutely. Celebrating those milestones helps reinforce positive learning habits.
Okay.
And it keeps you motivated, whether it's a small treat
Yeah.
or watching an episode of your favorite show.
Yeah.
Even just taking a break to do something you enjoy. Those little rewards, they go a long way.
I like that. All right, so let's move on to secret number 2. Speaking as often as possible, even if you're alone.
Okay.
I have to admit, I've definitely caught myself having conversations with my plants in English before.
I think we've all been there.
But, is that actually helpful?
It might sound a little silly,
Yeah.
but there's actually some solid science behind this.
Okay.
Because every time you speak, you're engaging those muscles that are involved in producing those specific sounds.
I've never thought about that.
It's like working out at the gym, but for your vocal cords and your brain.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was getting ready for a big presentation in Spanish,
Okay.
and I was pretty nervous about it, so I started practicing out loud, even when I was alone in my apartment.
You were just talking to yourself.
Yeah, I would pace around talking to this imaginary audience, asking them questions, responding to their reactions.
Oh, wow.
It felt a little awkward at first,
Yeah.
but the more I did it, the more natural it became.
So it's all about building that muscle memory.
Yes.
Getting your brain and your mouth used to forming those sounds.
Exactly.
Cool. And the best part is you can do it anytime, anywhere.
All right.
Narrate your day, have these imaginary debates, sing along to English songs. Just get those words flowing.
Exactly. Just find those opportunities to speak and let it flow.
Speaking of flow, that leads us perfectly into the next secret,
Okay.
which emphasizes the power of listening. Why is listening so important for fluency?
Well, think about how we all learned our first language. We spent months, maybe even years, just absorbing those sounds and patterns
Right.
before we ever even uttered a word.
Yeah.
So listening, it's really the foundation upon which we build our understanding of any language.
You know what? I've actually noticed that when I spend a lot of time watching movies or TV shows in English, my pronunciation and intonation actually improve.
Interesting.
It's like my brain's subconsciously picking up on those nuances.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's like you're immersing yourself in the language.
Right.
Even if it's just virtually.
Yeah.
And this guide, It actually has some great suggestions for maximizing your listening practice.
I'm assuming podcasts are one of them.
Oh, podcasts are amazing.
I love podcasts.
And there's honestly something for everyone.
Yeah.
Like, if you're interested in news analysis, you could try The Daily from the New York Times.
Okay.
Or if you want, like, science and storytelling, there's this really cool podcast called Radio Lab.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
And if you're looking for something a little more humorous,
Okay.
I highly recommend My Dad Wrote a Porno.
That sounds hilarious.
So funny.
Okay, I'll have to check that one out. And of course, we can't forget about music.
Of course not.
Such a great way to not only pick up new vocabulary and idioms and slang, but also just to kind of get that pronunciation and intonation in a fun way.
Right. Because it's way more fun than just doing drills.
Yes, exactly.
Singing along.
So much more enjoyable.
Much better.
Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty of language learning.
All right.
Secret number 4, chunking and collocations.
Love these.
Can you break down for us what those are and why they're so important for fluency?
Okay, so imagine you're building a house.
Okay.
It would take forever if you had to lay each brick one by one, right?
Yeah, that would be very time-consuming.
Chunking and collocations are like having these prefabricated walls and roof sections.
Oh.
So you could assemble things much faster
Okay.
and create a more, like, cohesive structure.
I'm liking this analogy. So instead of focusing on individual words, we should be looking for these chunks of language.
Yes. And these chunks are called collocations.
Okay.
They're so common in English.
Okay.
For example, we say heavy rain,
Okay.
not strong rain.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or make a decision,
Yeah.
not take a decision.
I see. I think I do that sometimes.
And that's where these collocations come in. They help you sound more natural and fluent by using combinations that native speakers just instinctively use.
Yeah, because I noticed that sometimes, like, I know all the vocabulary, but I can't quite figure out how to put them together in the right way.
Exactly.
So how can listeners start incorporating these chunking and collocations into their routine?
So one really simple technique is to create what's called a phrase notebook.
Okay.
So as you're reading or listening and you come across these collocations, just jot them down in your notebook,
Okay.
along with their meanings and maybe some example sentences.
I like that. And I would assume that these space repetition apps we talked about earlier would also be helpful for this.
Oh, they're amazing for this.
Yeah.
Because space repetition helps move information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory
Okay.
by presenting you with that material at gradually increasing intervals.
Gotcha.
So it's like having a personal trainer, but for your vocabulary.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to secret number 5. And this one might be reassuring to our listener.
Okay.
It's okay to simplify your sentence structures, especially at the beginning.
Especially at the beginning.
Does that mean we don't have to worry about grammar?
No, grammar's still important.
Okay.
But fluency isn't about trying to build these, like, super complex sentences right away.
Right.
Actually, using shorter, simpler sentences can make you sound more confident and more fluent,
Interesting.
especially when you're still developing your skills.
So it's more about clarity and conciseness than trying to, sound super smart with your grammar.
Exactly. Imagine you're explaining, like, a really complex concept to someone.
Okay.
It's way easier to understand if you break it down into smaller, bite-sized chunks, right?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely get caught up sometimes trying to construct these elaborate sentences, and it just ends up sounding confusing.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
So there's a really simple technique from the guide.
Okay.
You start with a basic sentence,
Uh-huh.
like, I enjoy reading.
Okay.
Then you gradually add details and complexity.
Oh, I like that.
So you could say, I enjoy reading books about history,
Okay.
and then expand it further. I enjoy reading books about history, especially biographies of influential leaders.
So you're building upon that simple sentence.
Yes.
Without making it overly complicating.
Exactly.
So it's finding that balance between clarity and complexity.
Yes.
And, starting simple and then gradually working your way up.
That's the key. And don't be afraid to experiment and see what feels more natural for you.
Yeah.
You might find that certain sentence structures are easier for you to produce than others.
Right.
The important thing is to keep practicing, keep refining those skills.
Practice makes perfect, as they say.
Or at least progress.
Or at least progress, yeah.
That's the goal.
Exactly.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the secrets of fluent English.
So we've already uncovered some really cool strategies so far.
Yeah, we're just getting started.
But I'm always up for more tips and tricks, you know what I mean? What else does this guide have in store for us?
It talks a lot about staying curious
Okay.
and, like, making your learning engaging.
I can definitely see how that would be important. Like, if you're genuinely interested in something, it's got to be way easier to stay motivated, right?
Exactly. It's like instead of slogging through those boring textbook exercises,
Oh, yeah.
you're exploring subjects that actually pique your curiosity,
Right.
whether it's, technology, sports, global news.
Okay.
Even something like cooking or fashion.
Ooh, fashion.
That's a good one.
Like, imagine diving into the world of, like, fashion magazines and blogs and documentaries all in English.
Yeah.
You'd not only be picking up new vocabulary, but you'd also be gaining these insights into, like, cultural trends and perspectives.
Totally. That's exactly what it's all about.
Okay.
And it brings us to another important aspect of fluency, cultural immersion.
Oh, okay.
Because language is so much more than just, words and grammar.
Right.
It's a reflection of a culture's values, its history, its way of life.
I like that. So by immersing ourselves in English language media, we're kind of getting a deeper understanding of the culture that shapes the language.
Yeah, it's like you're getting this backstage pass to how native speakers actually think and express themselves.
That's cool. So it's not just about memorizing vocabulary lists. You're connecting with, like, the heart and soul of the language.
Yes, exactly.
I love those aha moments. When you finally grasp a tricky grammar concept.
Yeah.
Or you effortlessly use a new idiom in conversation.
The best feeling.
But this guide really emphasizes, like, acknowledging even the small victories.
Yes.
Those tiny steps forward that might seem insignificant at the time. Why is that so important?
It's all about maintaining motivation and momentum.
Okay.
Because language learning, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
For sure.
And there are going to be times when you hit a plateau, you feel discouraged.
Yeah, definitely been there.
But if you can train yourself to recognize and appreciate those tiny little sparks of progress,
Okay.
it makes all the difference in staying the course.
It's like those fitness trackers that celebrate every 1,000 steps you take.
Yes.
Even if you haven't quite reached your daily goal yet.
Exactly. It's like those little nudges of encouragement.
They can be really motivating.
Very motivating. And it's important to celebrate those wins in a way that works for you.
Yeah.
So maybe it's treating yourself to a fancy coffee or watching an episode of your favorite show.
Okay.
Or just taking a moment to savor that feeling of accomplishment.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about staying curious, immersing ourselves in the culture, celebrating those small wins.
Yeah.
What about the practical side of things? Like,
Okay.
how does this guide recommend structuring our study time?
It offers this sample weekly plan
Okay.
that emphasizes a balance between focused study
Uh-huh.
and then real-world application.
I like that.
And of course, you can tailor it to your own needs and preferences.
Right.
But the general idea is to dedicate specific blocks of time
Okay.
to different aspects of language learning.
Got it. So, for example, Mondays could be for grammar review
Yes,
and maybe practicing conversation with a language partner.
perfect. Exactly. Then midweek, you might focus on expanding your vocabulary,
Okay.
maybe by learning new collocations
Oh, yeah.
related to a topic that you're passionate about.
Cool.
You could read articles, listen to podcasts, even watch documentaries on that subject,
Uh-huh.
and actively jot down any interesting phrases or expressions that you come across.
I like that. And maybe Fridays could be for, like, fine-tuning pronunciation through drills or shadowing exercises.
Exactly. And don't forget to leverage the weekend for immersive experiences.
Okay.
Maybe you attend an English language meetup,
Oh, cool.
or you watch a movie without subtitles,
Oh, that's a good one.
or you just chat with a friend in English.
Okay.
Those real-life interactions are so valuable.
Yeah, it sounds like the key is to create a routine that works for you and then stick to it consistently.
Absolute consistency is key.
Okay, but let's circle back to those 9 secrets for a second.
Okay.
And see if there are any specific strategies that we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
I know we talked about chunking and collocations in the first part.
Yeah.
Any additional tips on how to really master those?
One thing this guide emphasizes is the importance of context.
Okay.
So don't just memorize collocations in isolation.
Uh-huh.
Try to encounter them in their natural habitat, so to speak.
Okay.
Pay attention to how they're used in articles, books, movies, conversations.
It's like learning a new dance move. You can watch videos and try to mimic the steps,
Yeah.
but it's not until you actually get out on the dance floor
Yeah.
and try it out in a real setting that you truly understand how it works.
I love that analogy.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, the more you encounter those collocations in those authentic contexts,
Okay.
the later you'll understand their nuances and how to use them effectively.
Okay, so context is key. What about those of us who tend to overthink our sentences
Yeah.
and get stuck in grammar land?
Oh, yeah.
Any advice for overcoming that?
The guide reminds us that fluency is not about grammatical perfection.
Okay.
It's about conveying your message clearly and confidently.
Uh-huh.
even if your sentences aren't perfectly structured.
So it's better to speak like a slightly imperfect sentence fluently
Yes,
than to stumble over a grammatically perfect sentence.
exactly. And remember that technique we talked about earlier, sentence expansion?
Oh, yeah.
You can start with a basic sentence and gradually add details and complexity as you become more comfortable.
I like that. So the key is to prioritize clarity and flow over grammatical intricacy.
Especially in spoken English, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm curious about those techniques we discussed for refining pronunciation, like reading aloud and shadowing.
Yeah,
Any additional tips for getting the most out of those?
absolutely. When you're reading aloud, try to focus not only on the accuracy of your pronunciation,
Okay.
but also on the rhythm and intonation of the language.
So it's not just about saying the words correctly, but also about capturing that natural flow and expressiveness.
It's like adding musicality to your speech.
Oh, I like that a lot. And what about shadowing?
Okay, so one helpful tip is to break down the audio clip into smaller chunks.
Okay.
So instead of trying to shadow a whole podcast episode,
Right.
you could start with a short segment, maybe a minute or two.
Okay.
Listen to it several times, paying attention to the speaker's pronunciation and intonation. Then pause the audio and try to mimic the speaker as closely as possible.
Gotcha. So it's like practicing a short musical phrase on an instrument,
Yeah.
getting each note and nuance just right before moving on to the next phrase.
I love that analogy. It's perfect. And just like with music practice, consistency is key.
Okay.
Even a few minutes of shadowing practice each day can really improve your pronunciation and fluency over time.
I know we've talked about setting SMART goals, but sometimes the sheer scope of language learning can feel overwhelming.
Yes.
Any advice for like breaking down those fluency aspirations into more manageable chunks?
The guide suggests setting smaller, more specific goals
Okay.
that align with your overall fluency objectives.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of simply aiming to improve my vocabulary,
Yeah.
you could set a goal to learn 10 new collocations related to travel each week.
I like that that's much more concrete and measurable.
Yes, exactly. And it feels much more attainable than just saying, I want to learn all the English words.
Right. And it's still contributing to that broader goal of fluency.
Exactly. And don't forget to track your progress.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you use a notebook, a spreadsheet, a language learning app, having that visual representation of your achievements can be so motivating.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this segment, exploring all these practical tips and strategies for boosting fluency.
We have.
But before we move on to our final thoughts,
Okay.
I want to circle back to that concept of balance for a second.
Okay.
We've talked about balancing focused study with real-world application.
Right.
But what about balancing the different elements of language learning itself?
That's such a good point. Remember that three-legged stool analogy we discussed earlier?
Oh, yeah.
Fluency is built on that solid foundation of grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Uh-huh.
And neglecting any one of those areas can weaken that entire structure.
It's so tempting to focus on the areas we enjoy most.
Yeah.
Like, I love reading, so I could spend hours reading English novels
Yeah.
or binge watching TV shows, but then maybe I neglect those grammar exercises or pronunciation drills.
Yeah, it's natural to gravitate towards what we find enjoyable.
Yeah.
But it's so important to find that balance
Okay.
that ensures that you're dedicating sufficient time and attention to all three legs of the stool.
So how can our listener make sure they're maintaining that balance?
The guide suggests creating a cyclical practice schedule
Okay.
where you alternate between those different areas of language learning.
Okay.
So, for instance, you might focus on grammar exercises and conversation practice on Mondays,
Okay.
vocabulary building and writing on Wednesdays,
Gotcha.
and pronunciation drills and listening comprehension on Fridays.
So you're cycling through
Exactly.
and hitting all those different areas.
Yes. And of course, you can adjust the schedule to fit your own preferences and learning style.
Right. It's all about finding what works for you.
That's the key.
That's a great reminder because it's so easy to get caught up in one aspect of language learning and neglect the others.
Yeah.
But just like with a balanced diet, variety is key for overall fluency health.
I love that analogy. Variety is key.
All right, so here we are at the final part of our fluency deep dive.
Yeah, we've explored 9 secrets, a whole bunch of strategies. Now we just got to bring it all together.
So it's like our fluency action plan, ready to go to put it all into practice.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So what are the key takeaways, the biggest ha moments from this whole guide?
You know, one of the most powerful ideas is that fluency. It's not like this finish line you cross. You know? It's this ongoing process. It's a journey of discovery and growth.
I like that because then you can enjoy the process and celebrate those milestones.
Exactly. And it kind of ties in with that whole learner's mindset thing. You know, it's shifting away from that fear of making mistakes.
Right.
To being curious about what you can learn from those mistakes.
Yeah.
When you're not afraid to stumble, you're more likely to experiment, take risks,
Totally.
and really immerse yourself.
But mistakes can be discouraging sometimes, especially when you feel like you're stuck.
Right.
So how can our listener, use this guide to kind of break through those plateaus?
Well, immersion is key.
Okay.
This guide really emphasizes surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Yeah.
So podcasts, movies, music, even social media.
Yeah, I've been really into documentaries lately.
Oh, nice.
And there are so many good ones in English. It's like a great way to learn about different topics and improve my listening at the same time.
That's awesome. And remember the power of real-world interactions.
Right.
Whether it's through language exchange apps or conversation clubs or just chatting with friends.
Yeah.
Those authentic experiences, they're so essential.
So it's putting those skills to the test in the real world.
Exactly. Which can be a little scary at first, but the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get.
Right. Okay, so let's go back to one of the most practical strategies from the guide, chunking and collocations.
Yes.
Like, it's such a good way to sound more natural and fluent.
I think such.
Instead of searching for the individual words, you just have these ready-made chunks.
It's like a secret weapon.
Exactly. So the more you see these collocations in real situations, the better you'll understand them.
Exactly. So it's not just about memorizing those lists.
Right.
It's about observing how those phrases are used in real life.
Yeah.
Like noticing how a character in a movie uses a particular phrase.
Yeah.
Or paying attention to the word combinations in a news article.
So paying attention to those little things.
Exactly. And for those who get kind of bogged down by the grammar,
yeah.
remember fluency. It's not about perfection.
So it's okay to start with those simpler sentences.
Absolutely. And gradually add that complexity as you get more comfortable.
Right. Just focus on getting your message across.
Yes.
Okay. And then last but not least, those techniques for refining pronunciation, reading aloud and shadowing.
Those are good ones.
Any final tips to make those even more effective?
So when you're reading aloud, try to really embody the language.
Okay.
Pay attention to that rhythm, intonation, the pauses, the emphasis, like you're an actor delivering a line.
Oh, channeling your inner Shakespeare.
Exactly. And when you're shadowing, focus on those smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Listen really closely to how that speaker is shaping those sounds and try to mimic them.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to record yourself. And then listen back.
Because sometimes it's eye-opening.
It's like, whoa, that's what I sounds like.
Exactly. And when it comes to staying motivated, remember those specific achievable goals.
Those SMART goals, right?
Yes.
But don't just vaguely aim for fluency.
Right.
Break it down into those smaller steps.
Exactly. So, for example, you could say, I'm going to learn 5 new idioms related to work this week.
Okay.
Or I'm going to practice shadowing for 10 minutes each day.
Okay.
Because those concrete targets, they'll help you stay focused.
And track that progress, so you can see how far you've come.
It's encouraging, especially on those days when you're not feeling so motivated.
Totally. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, got to bring it back to balance one last time.
Yes.
Fluency, grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation. Make sure you're nurturing all three.
All 3 legs of the steel.
Exactly. So, if you're spending hours and hours on vocabulary, but you're not practicing your pronunciation.
Yeah, you got to shift your focus a little bit.
Got to find that equilibrium.
Exactly. And remember, the best way to learn is by doing. Don't be afraid to step outside that comfort zone.
Right.
And use your English in real-life situations.
Exactly. So ordering food at a restaurant, asking for directions, chatting with a stranger.
Yeah, those interactions, they'll build your skills and your confidence.
So there you have it. 9 secrets, a ton of strategies, and a reminder. Enjoy the journey.
Embrace it.
This guy asks a great question. How will you personalize these secrets and make them your own?
It's up to you.
So reflect on what you learned today and start creating your own path. Remember, language learning's an adventure. Keep practicing, keep exploring, and keep sharing your gift of language.
Until next time, happy language learning.
All right, let's dive in. We're unlocking a vault today filled with 25 uncommon but incredibly useful English words.
And these aren't just any old words, no. We're giving you the good stuff.
Yeah, these words are going to add some serious depth to your conversations. And maybe even a touch of magic, who knows?
Exactly. It's like we're equipping you with a whole new set of tools for expressing yourself.
So first up is astonishing. Everyone uses amazing or surprising.
Yeah, but astonishing, that's something else.
It is. It hits different, right?
Absolutely. It's like you've seen something that changes everything, It shifts your perspective.
Like if you were describing the Northern Lights and you're like, the Northern Lights display was absolutely astonishing. It just takes it up a notch.
Right. It's not just a description, it's an experience.
It really is. Okay, so let's talk about a word that gives you a completely different feeling. Bliss.
Bliss is so much more than just happy. It's like this deep sense of peace and joy.
Yeah, it's like that feeling you get when you're meditating or when you're out in nature. Have you ever felt that when you're out hiking?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like that feeling of pure contentment.
Yeah. And not just a fleeting emotion, it's like a state of being.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think we've all experienced this next one. Sometimes you don't even have the right word for it, but this word is perfect. Dwindle.
Ah, yes. Like watching a campfire slowly die out, or the last drops of coffee in your mug.
Oh, I can picture it perfectly.
Time, resources, and motivation, they can all dwindle away.
Yeah, it's that gradual decrease. Like it slowly fades away. It makes you really think about how you use your time and resources.
It does.
Okay, so speaking of resources, what about a word for making the most of what you have? Being smart about it. Frugal.
Frugal sometimes gets bad rap like it means being cheap, but it's not about that at all. It's about being mindful, you know?
Yeah, it's about intentionality.
Right.
Like making conscious decisions about your spending. So you're not wasting anything. It's almost like a whole philosophy.
It is. And it's not just about money. It's about everything. Time, energy, resources.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's move on to a word that's all about authenticity. Genuine.
Genuine is so important, especially these days.
I know, right? It's like everyone's trying to be someone they're not.
Exactly.
But genuine is all about being real, being true to yourself and to others too.
Yeah. And when you compliment someone's genuine nature, it means something.
It really does, because you're acknowledging that they're sincere, that they're not putting on an act.
Right. It's a compliment that goes a long way.
Okay, now let's talk about a word that can sometimes be a bit of a roadblock. Hinder.
Hinder, yeah. That's about the obstacles we face in life.
It could be anything, right? Procrastination, fear, even outside forces that are out of our control.
It's acknowledging those things that are holding us back.
Because once you acknowledge them, you can start to overcome them.
Exactly.
Now, have you ever worked on a project or maybe tried to learn a new skill and felt like it was just way too much?
All the time.
Complicated comes to mind. But what about the word intricate?
Ooh, intricate is good. It's like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it's complex, but it's also beautifully structured, like a fancy watch or something.
Right, there's an order to it.
It's not just chaos, it's organized complexity.
I like that, organized complexity.
Okay, intricate. I'm going to use that one. Now, let's be real. We're all juggling a lot these days. Work, family, life, it's a lot.
It really is.
So the word juggle, it's pretty perfect, don't you think?
It is, because you're trying to keep all those bowls in the air.
Exactly. You're trying not to let anything drop.
And it takes practice, right? And focus.
Yeah, and a good sense of balance.
Definitely.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, what about a word that describes something that's financially rewarding?
Lucrative.
Lucrative. It has a nice ring to it.
It does.
It makes you think of success, abundance.
Exactly. Like a career that's not just fulfilling, but also goes well.
Or even a side hustle.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about a word that captures that sense of wonder and amazement. Marvel.
Marvel. Like when you see something truly breathtaking.
Oh, I remember the first time I saw the Grand Canyon. It was just incredible. I was in awe. Like, how did this even happen?
Right. It's that feeling of wonder.
Yeah, an appreciation for something bigger than yourself.
It's a powerful feeling.
It is. Okay, so we live in a world where everything is connected, right? Technology is everywhere. So the word ubiquitous is pretty fitting, wouldn't you say?
It is. It's like smartphones, social media, they're everywhere you look.
Yeah, we're surrounded by it, and it makes you think about the impact it's having.
On everything.
On everything. Okay, let's wrap up this first round with a word that's all about embracing the unknown. Venture.
Venture. That's about taking risks, stepping outside your comfort zone.
Exactly. It could be starting a business, traveling to a new country, or just trying something new. It's about that willingness to explore.
And to see where it leads you.
Yeah, and to grow along the way.
Exactly. Even if it's a little bit scary.
It is. Okay, so we've covered some amazing words in this first round, but we've got more to come.
You know, when we were talking about venture, it can be kind of scary, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like you never know what's going to happen.
Right, and sometimes you just don't feel ready, like reluctance.
Exactly. Like you want to stay in your comfort zone. It feels safe there.
I get it. But I also think sometimes reluctance can be a good thing.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Like it gives you time to really appreciate what you already have, you know, before you jump into something new.
That's a good point. It's like that feeling right before you go on vacation.
Yes, that's a perfect example. Okay, so let's talk about a word that has a really cozy, comforting vibe to it. Quaint.
Quaint is just so charming, isn't it?
It is. It makes me think of those little towns you see in movies.
With the cobblestone streets and the cute little shops.
Yes, or like a cozy bookstore with a fireplace.
Yeah, it has that old-fashioned feel, doesn't it?
It does, like a simpler time.
Less hustle and bustle.
Yeah, definitely less stressful. Okay, so now let's move on to a word that's all about subtlety. Subtle.
Subtle is about those things you don't notice right away, but you make a big difference.
Like a faint smell of perfume. Or like the way someone raises an eyebrow.
Exactly. It's those little things that add depth and meaning.
Yeah, it's not about being loud or flashy. It's about the details.
Right, and sometimes those details are the most powerful.
They really are. Okay, so now let's talk about being practical and getting things done. Pragmatic.
Pragmatic people, they're the problem solvers.
Yeah, they're not afraid to roll up their sleeves and figure things out.
And they focus on what works, none of that fancy stuff, just solutions.
Yeah, and they're efficient too. They get right to the point.
Okay, so now let's switch gears again. What about a word for an idea that's just starting to form? Like a seed.
Notion.
Notion. I like that. It's like a glimmer of inspiration.
Exactly. Like you're not quite sure where it's going yet. Right, but it has potential. It could grow into something amazing, or it might just fizzle out, but it's still worth paying attention to.
Oh, absolutely. You never know where those little notions might lead.
Okay, so now let's talk about the opposite of being insightful. Oblivious.
Oh, yeah. We all know someone who's oblivious.
They're just completely unaware of what's going on around them.
It's like they're in their own little world.
They can be kind of funny sometimes, but also a little frustrating.
Definitely. Like, how do you not see what's right in front of you?
Right. You got to pay attention to the cues.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you're going to miss out.
Okay, remember we talked about keen earlier? It's like the opposite of oblivious.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean.
Keen is all about being alert and engaged, eager to learn.
While oblivious is like totally clueless.
Exactly.
Makes sense. Okay, so what about a word for being really passionate about something? Like super enthusiastic.
Zealous.
Zealous, that's the one. Like you're so into it, you can't contain yourself. It's contagious.
Yeah, and it inspires other people.
It does. Okay, now let's celebrate what makes each of us unique. Quirks.
Quirks are those little things that make you, you.
They're like your signature moves.
Exactly, like that friend who always wears mismatched socks.
Or the coworker who collects those weird little figurines.
Yeah, it's those things that make you interesting.
I love that. Quirks are awesome. Okay, so what about a word that describes who we are at our core?
Identity.
Identity, that's a big one.
It is. It's about your values, your beliefs, your experiences.
Everything that makes you, you. And it's always changing too, right?
Exactly. We're always growing and evolving.
Okay, before we move on, I want to talk about thrive again for a second.
Oh, thrive's a great word.
It is. It's like you're not just surviving, you're flourishing.
You're living your best life.
Yeah, you're reaching your full potential. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of great words, but we've got one more set to go. Okay, we're back, ready for the final round. What words are we looking at this time?
Well, let's start with yearn. It's a powerful word, you know?
It is. It makes me think of like really deep longing for something you can't have.
Yeah, like a lost love or a dream that feels impossible.
Right. It's that ache in your heart. But there's also beauty in it, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It shows how deeply we can feel.
Yeah, and it can be a motivator too. Like that yearning pushes you to try harder.
It does. It can push you to venture out and try new things.
Oh, I see the connection. Like yearn is the fuel and venture is the action.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about a word that's really important for success. Tenacity.
Oh, tenacity is huge. It's all about never giving up.
Yeah, it's like you're determined to reach your goal no matter what. You don't let anything stop you.
Right. You just keep pushing through.
It makes me think about our listeners, you know. How do they handle challenges? Are they tenacious?
That's a great question. It's something to think about.
It is. Okay, so tenacity is about never giving up. But what about persistent?
Persistent is a little different. It's more about consistency.
Okay, so like you're steadily working towards something, even if it takes a long time.
Yeah, it's like that saying, slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. You just keep at it and eventually you break through. Okay, so now let's talk about a word that describes something truly significant. Monumental.
Monumental, like a historical event that changes everything.
Yeah, or like a scientific discovery, or even a personal achievement that transforms your life.
Exactly. It's a turning point.
It makes you think about what really matters, you know, what leaves a mark on the world.
It does. And sometimes those monumental events are met with a lot of excitement. Remember zeal?
Yeah, like monumental describes the event and zeal describes the feeling.
Right. Okay, and speaking of feelings, let's revisit thrive. It's such an important word, especially when we're talking about personal growth.
It is. It's like you're not just existing, you're thriving.
You're living a full, meaningful life.
Yeah, you're constantly growing and evolving. Okay, so for our final word, we're going to talk about what makes you, you, identity.
Identity is a complex thing, isn't it? It's all the pieces that make you who you are.
Yeah, your beliefs, your experiences, your values, everything. And it's not fixed either, right?
No, it's always changing. We're always learning and growing.
I love that. It's like we're all works in progress. Well, I think we've covered some incredible words today. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too, and I hope our listeners have as well.
I hope they've been inspired to use these words in their own lives and to keep exploring language. There's always more to discover.
That's right. Words are powerful tools. Use them wisely.
So true. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this word journey.
Ever get that feeling like English is playing a little prank on you? You know, like it's got these secret rules. Today we're doing a deep dive into some tricky nouns, words that even native speakers can trip over sometimes. Like think advice, equipment, even the word news. Like these words are so common, but they have these weird little rules. So our mission, today is to help you kind of steer clear of those grammatical potholes. And just help you sound even smarter, more confident with your English.
Yeah, it is kind of fascinating how these simple words can kind of open up these deeper complexities, I guess you could say, about language. And even, I think, how we look at the world.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so wisdom time. Lay it on me. So let's just start with this idea of uncountable nouns. What's the deal with that?
Well, imagine you're trying to count water. So you can have some water or, a lot of water, but could you have 3 waters? It doesn't work that way. And uncountable nouns work kind of the same way. They represent these ideas or things that are seen as a whole, not really individual units.
So it's more about the stuff itself, not individual pieces of it.
Exactly. So take the word advice. Someone might give you a piece of advice, but never 5 advices. It's that whole concept of guidance that's being conveyed.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So are there any clues that can help us spot these uncountable nouns when we come across them?
Often, are kind of abstract ideas like information or knowledge. You can have lots of information, but you don't have many informations.
This is making me realize how much we rely on context to understand the meaning. Like knowledge, that's a good example. You could expand your knowledge, but you never expand your knowledges.
Exactly. The context tells us we're talking about this collective whole, not really separate pieces. And this can be a real head scratcher for people who are learning English, especially if their native language treats these concepts kind of in a different way, I guess.
It's like English is testing us. It's like, let's see if they can figure this out. Okay, so what are some other, uncountable nouns that kind of trip people up?
Well, furniture is a big one. Think about it. You can have a room full of furniture, but you wouldn't say like 10 furnitures.
Yeah, unless you're playing some kind of weird furniture-themed board game.
That's true, yeah. But in regular, everyday language, it's always about the collection as a whole.
Okay, so advice, information, knowledge, furniture, I'm starting to get it. What else should we watch out for?
News is a sneaky one. It looks plural, but it's actually a singular, uncountable noun. You hear about the news or a piece of news. You never hear about many news, right?
That one always throws me off. It feels like, there are multiple pieces of news all the time.
Right, and there are, but the word itself, it's talking about this concept of current events, not separate stories. It's like a river of information constantly flowing.
I like that. It's making me see the word news in a whole new light. So what about things that come in sets or groups, like luggage?
Ah, yes. So luggage and baggage, those are both uncountable nouns. You can have many suitcases, but it's always luggage or baggage, never luggages or baggages.
So even if I have just one little carry-on, it's still considered luggage.
That's right. It refers to the whole collection of items you're traveling with, regardless of the number of pieces.
Okay, so luggage is officially added to my uncountable nouns list. What about hair? I've heard people get that one wrong a lot.
Yeah, so you've probably heard people talk about finding a hair in their food, right? And that's correct when you're referring to a single strand. But when you're talking about like the mass of hair on your head, it's always just hair, never hairs.
So it's that collective whole, again, not individual strands unless they're, I guess, out of place, like in your soup.
Exactly. Context is key here.
This is making me wonder, are there any historical reasons why some of these words ended up being uncountable in English? Like, is there some logic to it?
There are some interesting theories out there. Like, for example, the word news being singular. It might have roots in its early association with tidings, which is like seen as this like singular big announcement.
That is interesting. So maybe it's not just random grammar rules, but maybe it gives us a glimpse into how people thought about these concepts way back when.
Yeah, I think so. Language is constantly changing, but it carries traces of its past. It's fascinating.
Okay, so we've got advice, information, knowledge, furniture, news, luggage, and hair. What other uncountable nouns should we add to our list?
Let's do a few more that tend to cause some confusion. So when we talk about the material itself, paper is uncountable. You would ask for a piece of paper, not a paper, unless you're talking about a specific document like a research paper.
Ah, so that's how it becomes countable when it refers to a specific piece of writing.
Exactly. And work follows a similar pattern. When you're talking about tasks and effort, it's uncountable. You have a lot of work, not many works.
Unless you're talking about, Shakespeare's works, which are individual pieces of writing.
Yes, precisely. So context, again, plays a big role here in whether these nouns are countable or uncountable.
Okay, paper and work, got it. What else is out there?
Research and evidence, those two can be a little tricky. You conduct research, you never conduct researches. And you might find a piece of evidence, never many evidences.
Those are really good ones to keep in mind. I've seen people make those mistakes in writing before.
It's a common slip-up, but, now you can avoid it. And for our last uncountable noun, let's talk about toast.
Wait, toast? But you can have multiple pieces of toast, can't you?
Yes, but when we're talking about the food itself, toast is uncountable, so you have slices of toast, not toasts.
That one is surprising, but I guess it makes sense if you think of it as that concept of toasted bread rather than, counting each individual slice.
Exactly. And of course, you can make a toast at a celebration, in which case then toast becomes countable because it's referring to that specific act or gesture.
Wow, toast is quite the word. So these uncountable nouns are full of surprises, but you've done a great job explaining them for us. What's next? Okay, so we've talked about uncountable nouns, those words that resist the whole plural thing. But English, it wouldn't be English if it didn't throw us a few more curveballs, would it?
Oh, absolutely. English just loves to keep us on our toes. And one way it does that is with those irregular plurals, with the words that just they break all the rules.
Yeah, bring all those rule breakers. I'm ready. So what's first on our list?
Well, let's start with a word that I think causes a lot of confusion, especially, in the workplace, staff.
Okay, staff seems pretty simple. What's the catch?
Well, staff, it's usually treated like a collective noun. So it refers to a group of people, but as a single unit, like a team.
Okay, so if I wanted to, compliment the staff at my favorite restaurant, would I say the staff is amazing or the staff are amazing?
That's where things get a little tricky. So in American English, we usually use a singular verb with staff. So you'd say, the staff is amazing.
Okay, but I've definitely heard people say, the staff are going on strike.
Yeah, and you're right. In British English, it's more common to use a plural verb with staff, especially, when you want to empathize those individual members of that group.
So it's one of those American British English things. Got it. Staff is singular in the U.S., plural in the U.K. Okay, what's next on our list of these irregular plurals?
Let's talk about police. This is another one that I think throws people off. It's always plural, no matter what.
So even if I just see, one police officer walking down the street, I would still say, the police are here.
Yes, exactly. Grammatically speaking, police is considered a plural noun, and it's referring to, that whole body of law enforcement. So if you want to refer to, one single officer, you would use police officer.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see how that one could be confusing.
Yeah, it's a pretty common mistake, but, now you'll know. Speaking of common mistakes, let's move on to people.
People. Okay, so that one seems pretty straightforward. It's just the plural of person, right?
Right, but even with this simple word, I think we can run into some grammatical issues sometimes, because people is plural. You'd use many, not much with it. So it's many people, not much people.
Ah, okay. So it's like saying many dogs, not much dogs. It's about remembering that people, even though it refers to this big group, it's still countable.
Yeah, exactly. It's those little distinctions that make English so fun, right?
Well, and they also make it kind of a minefield, I think, for people who aren't familiar with, all the ins and outs. So what else? What other irregular plurals should we know about?
Okay, so let's talk about some Latin and Greek plurals. These are words that English borrowed from other languages, and, they brought their own plural forms with them.
Oh, Latin and Greek. That brings back some memories, not always good ones, of high school language classes.
Don't worry, these aren't too bad. But they are good to know because they pop up, all the time. So let's start with criteria.
Criteria. That one always sounds so formal to me.
Well, it is often used in more formal situations, and it's also one that people often use as a singular noun, but actually criteria is the plural form of criterion.
Okay, so let me see if I get this. If I was applying for a scholarship, I might say the main criterion for this scholarship is community involvement. But if there are, many different requirements, I'd say the scholarship committee uses several criteria to evaluate applicants.
Yes, you got it.
I have seen criteria misused as a singular noun. I've even seen it in published articles.
Yeah, it happens more often than you might think, but now you know, so you can get it right in your writing. And while we're talking about Latin plurals, let's do another one, phenomena.
Okay, phenomena. That's the plural of phenomenon, right?
You got it. And this is another one that trips people up sometimes. You know, you might hear someone say, that's a strange phenomenon, when really they should be saying a strange phenomenon.
So the aurora borealis is a beautiful natural phenomenon. But if we were talking about many different events, we'd say scientists are studying various meteorological phenomena.
Exactly. You're getting it. Are you ready for one more tricky plural before we move on?
Yeah, bring it on. I'm feeling more confident about these now.
Okay, this one's kind of a wild card. It's media. So technically, media is the plural of medium, you know, when you're talking about channels of communication.
Like television, radio, newspapers, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But here's where it gets interesting. So in modern usage, media often acts like a singular noun, a collective noun.
So you might hear someone say the media is biased, even though, technically media is plural.
That's right. It's become so common to just use media as a singular noun that, it's pretty widely accepted at this point. However, in formal writing, especially in academic context, you might see a preference for using media with a plural verb, especially when you're talking about like many different platforms. So you might also hear like the media are reporting on the election from many different angles.
So it's a bit of a gray area then.
Yeah, I think so. I think the important thing is to just be aware of, both usages and to choose the one that feels right in that situation.
Yeah, media is definitely one I'm going to be watching out for. Okay, so we've got staff, police, people, criteria, phenomena, and media. What else are we diving into today? So we've tackled those uncountable nouns, and we've wrestled with those irregular plurals. What other, noun-related mysteries are we solving today?
Well, let's look at a category that's all about context. So these are words that can kind of like shift between countable and uncountable depending on, how they're being used.
Ooh, okay, so grammatical chameleons. I like it. Give me an example.
Okay, so let's go back to paper, a word we talked about earlier. We know that it's uncountable when we're talking about the material itself, but what happens when you're talking about, essays or research papers?
Ah, okay, I see what you mean. So like, can I have some paper for my notes? That's uncountable. But if I say I have to write 3 papers for my literature class, now it's countable.
Exactly. In those academic situations, paper becomes countable because it's like, a specific defined piece of writing.
It's kind of like how work can go from uncountable effort to like countable creations.
You got it. Work can be like, the daily grind, like, oh, I have so much work to do. Or it can refer to like those tangible results, like the museum is showcasing the works of local artists. It's really interesting how one word can have such like different meanings.
Like English has all these secret codes, So what other words play this countable, uncountable game?
Well, fruit is a good one. Think about it. Like when you're just talking about fruit in general as like a healthy part of your diet, it's usually uncountable.
Yeah, like I try to eat fruit every day. But what about when you're talking about specific types of fruit, like apples or oranges?
Right. Then fruit becomes countable. So you might say like, this fruit salad has like 5 different fruits in it.
So fruit can be singular or plural, countable or uncountable. It just depends on what you want to say.
Exactly. It's a flexible word. It adapts. And for our last shape-shifting noun, let's go back to toast.
Wait, toast, but we already talked about that. It's an uncountable noun for the food, right?
I did. But remember, like, toast can also mean, like, the act of raising a glass, to celebrate something or someone. And in that case, it becomes, a countable event.
Oh, right. So I'd like some toast with breakfast. That's uncountable. But let's all raise a toast to the newlyweds. That's countable. It's like toast has 2 different lives.
I guess you could say that. So toast, the food, stays uncountable, but a toast, like the gesture, that's countable. English is just full of these funny little quirks, I guess.
It's really amazing how much depth there is to these, seemingly simple words. So what's the big takeaway here from all this deep dive we've done on these confusing English nouns?
I think the key is to just be open to the fact that language is flexible. It's always changing. Even, native speakers come across these tricky situations, and it's okay. I think the more we pay attention to context and we try to understand the rules and, those acceptances to the rules, and we appreciate all those subtle meanings, I think the more confident we become in using the language.
I like that. It's not about being perfect. It's about being curious and just being able to adapt. So maybe as a final thought for our listeners, just, keep your ears open. Pay attention to how these nouns are being used in conversation, in the books you read, articles. You might be surprised at what you what you notice.
Oh, absolutely. The world of language is it's full of discoveries.
Well, you've given us a lot to think about. And to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and you know what? Just embrace those quirks of the English language. Until next time, happy learning.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We're diving into advanced everyday English this time. We've got Stephen Collins' book. It's not like, your typical grammar textbook, I'll tell you that.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
It's much more exciting than that.
Yeah, it's packed with these colorful idioms and expressions, stuff you wouldn't find in, just your average English class.
Definitely. What I think is so cool about this book is that it's not just defining the words, it's showing you how to use them.
Right.
How to actually weave them into your conversations and, add that extra layer of nuance and really make your English sound more authentic.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Okay.
One that I saw, I was like, oh, to rub someone up the wrong way. I mean, who hasn't met someone who just knows how to push your buttons?
Right. It's funny how that idiom really captures that subtle way that, we can irritate each other. Sometimes without even realizing it.
Yeah.
The book gives an example of someone who, brags a lot.
Uh-huh.
And that, rubs another person the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's not just being annoyed. It's a very specific type of, irritation.
Right.
That comes from, those personality clashes.
Yeah.
Or just, different opinions.
Yeah, totally. It's like nails on a chalkboard, but for your soul.
Yeah.
Speaking of feeling irritated, how about this one? To do one's head in.
Oh, yeah.
Perfectly captures that feeling of being overwhelmed and frustrated. Mm-hmm. It's like, when you're trying to put together, I don't know, some furniture.
Yeah.
And the instructions are written in hieroglyphics or something.
Absolutely. I think the book mentions how it's that, you're stressed.
Yeah.
But this is you've hit your limit.
Yeah.
You've been troubleshooting the computer for hours and you just want to chuck the whole thing out the window.
Oh, been there.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about kind of, these big emotions, how about to be gutted? This one hit me right in the feels.
Yeah.
That feeling of devastation, when your team loses, in the final seconds of a huge game.
Yeah, or it's such a powerful image.
Yeah.
Of emptiness and despair.
Yeah.
It's so much more evocative than just saying, I'm sad.
Right.
It's that raw emotion.
Totally. All right. Let's go to something a little lighter, a little more fun.
Okay.
How about to get a kick out of something?
Oh, yeah. I love that word.
This one just makes me smile. It's about finding pure joy, excitement in something. I don't know, you discover a hidden talent or you try a new recipe. It's delicious.
What I love about that one is the energy of it.
Yeah.
It's not just enjoying something.
Right.
It's that burst of,
Yes.
pleasure.
Yes.
From something unexpected or exciting. It's when you finally figure out that puzzle.
Yeah.
You've been working on for days.
And it's contagious.
Yes.
When someone else is genuinely excited about something. Yeah. Just get swept up in it.
Absolutely.
Okay, this next one, I feel like it's a little tricky. To be past it, I feel like this is often used humorously.
Right.
To suggest that, someone's getting a little too old for something.
Uh-huh.
But there's a fine line, I think, between playful teasing and then, unintentional offense.
Yeah, you're right. The context is everything. It's all about the intention.
Yeah.
And, it can be that lighthearted way to acknowledge, time is passing.
Right.
But, if it's not used sensitively, it can be dismissive.
Right.
Even ageist.
Yeah. So, think before you speak. Especially with things like that. Okay, back to some fun ones. Once in a blue moon. This one's pretty self-explanatory, right? It's something that happens very rarely.
Yeah. What I find interesting is the book highlights how it's often used when people are complaining.
Right.
About how infrequent something is.
Yeah.
They're emphasizing the frustration.
Yeah, totally. Oh, this amazing thing happens so rarely, I might as well just give up all hope.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so for the go-getters out there, we've got to psych oneself up for something.
Oh, yeah.
This is all about mental preparation, positive self-talk. When you're facing a challenge.
It's about using, your mind to influence how you're going to do.
Right.
Think of an athlete visualizing their success before a big competition.
Yeah.
Or, a musician calming their nerves before a concert.
Yeah.
It's really interesting how language can be used as that tool.
Yeah.
for, self-motivation
Right,
and
totally.
empowerment.
And sometimes we need all the mental strength we can get,
Yeah, for sure.
especially when, shall we say, we are skint.
Oh, skint. I love that word.
I love that word. Such a colorful way to say like broke, short on money.
And using slang like that well,
Yeah.
it could really demonstrate, that you have a grasp of informal English.
Right.
You're comfortable with that more like playful, expressive side of the language.
Absolutely, yeah. Speaking of expressive language, how about clutching at straws? This is such a vivid way to describe that feeling of like desperation
Oh,
when you're holding on to like the slimmest sliver of hope, even when logic is telling you like it's probably not going to happen.
what's so interesting about this one is where it comes from.
Okay.
It's actually from the image of like a drowning person,
Oh, wow.
desperately grabbing anything, even straws, to stay afloat.
Wow.
So just like perfectly encapsulates that feeling.
Wow. That is so interesting. Okay. And last but not least, we have one that's shrouded in a bit of mystery.
Okay.
A dark horse. That person who seems to come out of nowhere and surprise everyone.
Uh-huh.
Like hidden talents, unexpected success.
I love that one. It's a good reminder to never underestimate anyone.
Yeah.
Even those who fly under the radar.
Yeah, for sure. It's like discovering a hidden gem,
Yeah.
or witnessing like a burst of brilliance. There's a certain thrill to that,
Absolutely. And dark horse is a really great example of how language evolves over time.
Okay.
It started in horse racing,
Right.
referring to a horse whose abilities were unknown, but now it's applied to all kinds of situations.
Wow, so cool. I don't know about you, but I feel like my vocabulary has just like expanded tenfold already.
I know, we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But I think what's so important is that, mastering these idioms, it's not just about memorizing definitions.
Right.
It's understanding those subtle nuances, the cultural context,
Yeah.
and really how they can add, depth and richness to the way you communicate.
Totally. It's about taking your English from, like textbook perfect to like native speaker fluent.
Exactly.
That's a journey worth taking, I think.
It really is.
Yeah.
But, what strikes me about these idioms is that they're not just about sounding impressive. They're about capturing those subtle shades of meaning that can be so hard to express with simpler vocabulary.
Yeah.
They really are. It strikes me is that they're not just about sounding impressive.
Right.
It's about capturing those subtle shades of meaning that, like, you wouldn't be able to express with simpler vocabulary.
That's so true. Like you wouldn't say, I'm feeling a bit, rubbed up the wrong way by this situation.
It doesn't have the same impact.
No, it really doesn't. And I think that's why, mastering these expressions can really elevate your English. It's like having this whole new set of tools to express yourself more precisely, more authentically.
It's about painting a more vivid and colorful picture with your words. And speaking of colorful language, what about slang?
Oh, yeah.
The book mentioned like skint as an informal way to say that you're broke.
Yeah.
And I just love how slang can just add personality and a sense of familiarity to a conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And being able to use slang appropriately, I think, is a sign of like really advanced language proficiency.
Great.
Shows that you understand the nuances of informal communication.
Yeah.
You're comfortable stepping outside of that like textbook English.
But, knowing when and where to use slang is key, right? You don't want to accidentally offend someone by using a term that's too casual or inappropriate.
Exactly. It's all about reading the room and adapting your language to that social context.
Yeah.
And, that's a skill that comes with practice and, exposing yourself to different communication styles.
Yeah, totally. It's like learning the unspoken rules of a new culture,
Yeah,
but, through language.
for sure.
One thing that really struck me when I was reading this book was the power of imagery in language. Like so many of these idioms create such vivid mental pictures,
Yeah,
and that makes them so much easier to remember and understand.
absolutely. Think about clutching at straws. That image of a drowning person. Right.
Desperately trying to grab at anything, even straws, to stay afloat.
Right.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it perfectly captures that sense of desperation,
Yeah.
the dwindling hope.
And that visual connection makes it stick. It's not just a phrase. It's like a story. And stories are powerful tools.
They are, and that's what's so great about advanced everyday English. It's not just a collection of idioms.
Right.
It's like a guide to unlocking the storytelling potential of English.
Right.
It's about understanding how these expressions can add depth and humor, emotional resonance, all of that.
It's about taking your English to the next level, where you're not just speaking the language, but you're wielding it
Exactly.
with confidence and finesse. And that brings us to, I think, a really important point. Context is everything.
Yes, it is.
We talked about it with slang, like social context, but it really applies to all aspects of advanced English.
Right.
What might be considered polite or appropriate in one culture
Right.
could be super offensive or inappropriate in another. It really could.
So cultural awareness is key. You can't just learn a list of words and phrases. You have to understand the nuances of how they're used
Exactly.
in different situations and across cultures.
That's where resources like this book can be so helpful.
Right.
They're not just giving you the vocabulary, they're giving you the insights
Right.
into how it's used.
Like having a cultural guidebook, alongside your dictionary. So let's dive into some specifics here. Remember to be past it.
Yeah.
We talked about how this phrase can be both playful and potentially offensive.
Right.
Depending on the intention, the relationship between the speaker and the listener.
Right. In a group of friends who are close, it might be a harmless way to tease someone about getting older.
Yeah.
But in a professional setting,
Yeah,
or if you don't know the person well, could be perceived very differently.
totally. So knowing your audience is so crucial. And I think that sensitivity to context, that's a hallmark of truly advanced English.
It really is. It shows you're not just fluent in the language, you're fluent in the culture,
Yeah.
the social norms.
It's about going beyond the textbook
Yeah.
and developing that intuitive understanding of how language works in the real world.
And that intuition comes from, exposure, practice, being willing to embrace the complexities of language and culture.
It's a journey, not a destination. And speaking of journeys, I'm curious, have you ever had any personal experiences where you realized the importance of understanding the cultural context of language?
Many times, actually. It makes you realize how much our language is a product of our culture.
Yeah.
What seems totally natural to us can sound really strange to someone else.
It's like you're seeing your own language, for the first time, with new eyes.
Exactly.
Noticing all the, little quirks and things that you've just always taken for granted.
Exactly. I remember one time I was trying to explain the word so dad to a friend who's an English speaker, and there just isn't a direct equivalent in English.
For that feeling of longing and melancholy for something that's gone.
Yeah, I've definitely run into those kinds of untranslatable words in other languages too. It makes you realize that language is so much more than just a communication tool.
Right.
It's a reflection of a culture's values and beliefs and even their emotional landscape.
It really is. And that's what makes learning a new language so cool, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just about the vocabulary. It's about broadening your understanding of the world
Right.
and how other people experience it.
Yeah, it's like you're opening a window into another culture's soul.
I love that.
And speaking of expanding our understanding, I think we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into advanced everyday English. We've explored idioms. We talked about slang and the importance of cultural context.
Yeah, we went beyond the simple definitions and really got to the heart of what it means to master a language.
Right.
It's so much more than just speaking correctly.
It's about effective communication, expressing yourself authentically, really connecting with people on a deeper level.
It's about using language as a tool for creativity and empathy and understanding.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
And remember, everyone, the learning never stops. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep having fun with the language.
Yeah. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be the one sharing your own untranslatable expression with the world. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to continue on your own language learning adventure. And we'll see you next time on the deep dive.
All right, get ready because we're going deep into some really cool English expressions.
Yeah.
We're talking about the kind of stuff from our source, advanced everyday English,
Yeah.
that, can really take your communication skills to the next level.
I think what's really neat about this particular collection is that it's not just about, trying to sound impressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding the subtle nuances of the language and how these expressions can really add depth and richness and even a touch of humor to your conversations.
Humor. Okay, now we're talking. So is this guide like a secret decoder ring for the English language?
You could say that, yeah. Take the phrase off the record, for example. Most people, they think it just means confidentiality, but there's so much more to it than that. I mean, if you really think about it, it can create, some pretty interesting dynamics.
Interesting.
Especially when you're talking about power and trust.
Okay, so how does off the record become about power dynamics?
Well, just think about this. The source gives an example of a mortgage consultant who advises a client to go to their own bank for better interest rates.
Okay.
But only off the record. Now, why would they do that? Are they genuinely trying to help the client? Or is there something else going on there?
Right.
Maybe a way to undermine their own company.
I mean, that's a good point. Suddenly it just gets a lot more complicated.
It does, yeah.
Who benefits the most from this kind of off-the-record advice?
Right.
Is it genuine goodwill or is it a power play?
Yeah. And that's what I think makes these advanced expressions so interesting.
Okay.
They operate on multiple levels.
Right.
And they can reveal a lot about the speaker's intentions.
This is like linguistic chess.
It is.
All right, this deep dive is blowing my mind already. But let's move on to a word that I think we often use without fully appreciating it.
Okay.
And that word is outgoing. We all know it describes someone who's, sociable,
Sure.
extroverted.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's more to it than that.
There is a lot more to it. Outgoing can also refer to expenses, right? Like if you're, calculating the outgoing costs on a property.
Right.
Or it can also describe like a departing official.
Interesting.
Like an outgoing president. Picture a job ad. Like they're looking for an outgoing sales assistant.
Yeah.
And then in another situation, picture a town saying farewell to their outgoing president.
Yeah. Wow. Very different situations. It's all about context, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The same word can completely change its meaning depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So how do we make sure we're using these words correctly?
Well, that's where, continuous learning comes in. Brushing up, as the source calls it.
Right.
It's important, whether it's, language skills or a specific subject or just staying up to date on current events. Brushing up is what keeps our knowledge fresh and relevant.
So it's not about just cramming in all this information and then, calling it a day.
No.
It's about updating, refining what we know.
Yeah.
I like that.
It is, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a much more sustainable approach.
It really is. Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of approaches, let's get into the world of touchy subjects
Okay.
and people. You know, we all know someone who's a bit sensitive, right?
Yeah.
Takes criticism personally, gets offended easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing there's more to this word than just, someone who's easily upset.
There is. The example that the source gives contrasts touchy with thick-skinned.
Okay.
And it suggests a whole spectrum of emotional resilience. We all have different thresholds for what we find, offensive or hurtful.
Right.
And navigating those differences can be tricky.
It's like we're all walking on eggshells sometimes.
Yeah, it is a bit like that.
So is being touchy always a bad thing?
Well, that's a good question. And I think it's one that we can explore further as we, dig into all these expressions.
I like it. Okay, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about something that could be both, comforting and incredibly frustrating.
All right.
Cliches.
Cliches, yes.
Those phrases we've all heard a million times.
A million times, yeah.
They've kind of lost all their meaning. Like I can practically hear a football manager saying, "We gave 110% out there."
Yeah, exactly. Why do they persist? Why do we keep using them?
That's a good question.
I think part of it is that they provide a sense of familiarity
Yeah.
and comfort. It's like a well-worn path in our brains, easy to follow,
Right.
and not very exciting.
So how do we avoid sounding like a broken record? Do we need to ban cliches from our vocabulary?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's one we'll definitely be getting into as we continue this deep dive.
Okay, good.
But first, I want to lay out another really versatile phrase.
Ooh, lay it on me. I like this. Lay out.
Yeah. To lay out, it can mean, presenting information clearly.
Right.
Like laying out proposals in a booklet.
Makes sense.
It can also describe designing a space, like laying out a garden.
Okay.
And of course, it can also mean, reluctantly spending money.
Oh, I've been there.
Like when you have to lay out a small fortune for unexpected car repairs.
Oh, tell me about it. So laying out can be about strategic planning, but also, the begrudging act of spending money you weren't planning on spending.
Yeah, exactly. It covers quite a lot.
Very adaptable phrase.
It is.
Sometimes I feel like a bit of a dog's body, especially in, the grand scheme of things.
Oh, the dog's body, yeah.
Running around doing those little tasks that nobody else wants to do.
Well, Our source actually has this fascinating story about Ted Davies.
Okay.
Now, he started his career as a football club, dog's body, cleaning boots, doing odd jobs.
Interesting.
Now,
Right.
Ted, he didn't let his, humble beginnings define him.
Good for him.
He used those experiences to learn and grow,
Right.
eventually becoming a successful football manager.
Wow.
It's a good reminder. We shouldn't underestimate the value of those, even those seemingly insignificant tasks.
That's inspiring, actually. Like they were almost laying the foundation for his, later success. Maybe we shouldn't dismiss the dog's body tasks so quickly.
No, I don't think we should.
Hidden opportunities there.
All right, well, let's talk about something that is so crucial in the world of business.
Okay.
Breaking even.
Breaking even.
Yeah.
The holy grail. Right.
It is for a lot of businesses, yeah.
It's that moment when your income matches your expenses.
Exactly. The source gives an example of a business hoping to break even in its first year,
Okay.
which, can be a tall order. It signifies stability.
Right.
And then, once you've achieved that balance, then you can start thinking about growth and expansion.
Yeah. It's like you've built a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Now you can add a few floors. But what happens when we're so busy, building that we end up with a huge backlog?
Oh, the dreaded backlog. Yes,
It can really feel overwhelming,
it can.
whether it's paperwork or, patients waiting to see the doctor or even just our own to-do list. It never seems to end.
That's true.
So backlogs can be everywhere, not just at work.
They really can.
But are they always a bad thing?
Well, it depends. They can be a sign that you're in high demand,
Right.
but they could also be a sign that something needs to change.
Okay.
Maybe you need to streamline your processes,
Makes sense.
delegate tasks,
Right.
or even just say no more often.
It's like a wake-up call.
It can be, yeah.
We need to reevaluate how we're managing our time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to another communication skill that I think is often overlooked,
All right.
and that is going beyond just getting the gist of something.
Oh, yeah, getting the gist. I think it's like, reading those spark notes for a book.
Yeah.
You understand the basic plot, but you miss all those nuances.
Right, the character development.
Exactly.
The beautiful language. It's like you're skimming the surface.
Yeah, you are.
You might see a couple of pretty fish,
Right.
but you're missing the whole ecosystem down there. So how do we move beyond getting the gist
Yeah.
and really engage with, the information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One that I think we should explore a little further as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Let's do it.
But first, I think we should shift our attention to something a little more exciting. The world of the up and coming.
Ooh, yes. The up-and-comers. I like that.
Those individuals or those trends that are poised for, greatness. This source gives a great example. Young politicians who are already skilled at, navigating legislation, foreign languages.
Wow. It's like they're already fluent in the language of power.
They are. They're the rising stars.
How do we identify these future leaders?
Well, I think it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
They often possess, a unique blend of talent, vision, and this willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's like they're already writing the next chapter of history
Yeah, they are.
while the current chapter is still being written. But is it always about being bold and disruptive?
That's a great question. And it's one that we will delve into further as we continue our exploration of advanced everyday English.
All right. Sounds good.
So we were talking about these young, up-and-coming politicians.
Right. Those rising stars.
But, up-and-coming isn't just limited to people. It can apply to, trends and ideas as well, things that are, gaining momentum.
Right. On the verge of becoming the next big thing.
Yeah.
So how do we spot these trends? Is there like a secret formula or something?
I wish there was, but I think it's a matter of, paying attention, keeping your finger on the pulse, so to speak. Reading, observing, talking to people, really immersing yourself in the world around you.
So it's about being curious, staying informed.
Exactly. And also, not being afraid to think outside the box, challenge those conventional assumptions.
Okay. So be curious, challenge assumptions.
Yeah.
Got it. Now let's talk about something that can be a little bit tricky.
Right.
The whole idea of, framing our thoughts,
Affirming. Yeah.
how we use language to shape the way that people perceive our message.
Because it really does matter, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. Even those seemingly simple choices like, active versus passive voice or, choosing specific adjectives, it can have a huge impact.
It can. The example that the source gives is the phrase up in the air.
Okay. Up in the air.
On the surface, it just means, uncertain.
Right, like plans for the weekend that haven't been finalized.
Exactly. But the way we use it can convey a whole range of emotions.
Right.
Imagine like a business owner telling their employees that their jobs are up in the air
Oh, yeah.
because of financial difficulties.
Oh, that takes on a whole new meaning.
It does. It's suddenly loaded with anxiety,
Yeah.
uncertainty.
So it's not just the words themselves.
No.
It's how we use them.
Yeah, it's about creating a mood.
Okay. So much to think about. All right, another expression that we all encounter from time to time, and it's not always pleasant,
Right.
to rub someone up the wrong way.
Oh, yeah, we all know that person.
Ugh, yes. That person who just, I don't know, they just get under your skin.
They do.
And they might not even mean to,
Right.
but something about them, just rubs us the wrong way.
So why is that? Why do some people have that effect?
It's a good question.
Is it a personality clash? A difference in values?
Who knows?
The phrase itself, though, rubbing someone up the wrong way, really does suggest a kind of fundamental incompatibility.
Like, yeah.
Two gears grinding against each other.
Oof, yeah. Creating that friction.
Yeah, and friction can, generate heat.
Ooh, I see where you're going with this.
And rubbing someone up the wrong way, well, that can lead to conflict,
Yeah.
resentment,
Right.
even like a breakdown in communication.
Okay. I'm going to try to be more mindful about how I'm rubbing people.
Yeah.
And speaking of breakdowns, let's talk about that moment when we finally reach our breaking point. The final straw or the last straw.
Yes, it's that one event or action that just pushes us over the edge.
Right. Like, I don't know, you've been putting up with a lot of nonsense.
You have, yeah.
And then suddenly there's this one thing and that's it, I'm done.
Exactly. You've had enough. It's like that old saying, the straw that broke the camel's back.
It really is. So how do we know when we've reached that point?
That's a really good question, an important one too. And I think it's something we should talk about more as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Okay, sounds good.
But first, I want to focus on another really crucial communication skill.
Okay.
The ability to weigh up different sides of a situation before making a judgment.
Weigh up. Okay, what does that mean to weigh up something?
Well, it means taking a step back,
Okay.
gathering information,
Right.
analyzing the pros and cons.
Looking at it from different angles.
Exactly. And, considering different perspectives before you actually reach a conclusion.
It's like being a judge. You have to examine all the evidence
You do.
before making a ruling.
And that process of weighing up, it's so important.
I can see that.
Especially in those really complex situations.
Yeah, where there's no easy answer.
Yeah, it's about being thoughtful and deliberate.
Okay, but sometimes even after we've, weighed up all the options, we still need more information.
Right.
So how do we draw out that information from someone who might not be so willing to share?
Drawing out information. That is a skill.
It is, yeah.
You need finesse, you need strategy.
It's like being a detective.
It is a bit like that.
Oh.
You have to ask the right questions.
Right.
Create a sense of trust.
Okay,
Be patient.
let the information kind of come out naturally.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's such a valuable skill
It is, yeah.
in all aspects of life, from personal relationships to professional negotiations.
It's about connection.
It is.
All right, well, sometimes I have to admit I feel completely baffled
Baffled? Yeah.
by certain situations, certain concepts. It's like my brain just hits a wall.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Those baffled moments.
What is going on?
Exactly. Like you're just lost in a maze.
Right. With no way out. But is being baffled always a bad thing?
That's a great question. And it's one that we can explore further as we delve deeper into advanced everyday English.
Okay, let's do it.
But first, I think we should shift our focus a little bit and talk about the importance of sometimes keeping a low profile.
Keeping a low profile. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, it's about, blending in,
Right.
flying under the radar, avoiding unnecessary attention.
So why would someone choose to do that?
Is it weakness or is
Right.
it strategy?
Ooh, good question. So when is it a good idea to keep a low profile?
And when should we, stand up and be noticed?
Those are good questions.
They are. And they're questions we'll definitely address as we continue to explore advanced everyday English.
Okay, good.
But for now, I want to dive into a phrase that I think we all relate to, especially in today's, crazy busy world.
Uh-oh, I know where this is going.
The dreaded backlog.
Oh, the backlog, that ever-growing mountain of stuff.
Yes.
Emails, tasks, just responsibilities.
It never ends, does it?
It really doesn't.
So the question is, are backlogs always a bad thing?
That's a good point.
Hmm.
Maybe they're a sign that we're, in high demand.
Could be.
We're just so popular we can't keep up.
Right, that's one way to look at it. But they could also be a sign that something needs to change.
Right.
Maybe you need to, streamline those processes,
Yeah.
delegate some tasks,
Okay.
or even just say no more often.
It's about setting boundaries.
It is, yeah.
So sometimes a backlog is a wake-up call.
It can be.
We need to reevaluate how we're spending our time.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of reevaluating, let's talk about a concept that's particularly relevant in the business world.
All right.
Breaking even.
Breaking even. Yeah, the dream, right.
For any entrepreneur.
It is. It's that point when your income finally matches your expenses.
Exactly.
No profit, but no loss either.
You're in the black.
You are. The source gives the example of a business hoping to break even in its first year, which, can be a huge accomplishment for a new business. It's a sign of stability.
It is, yeah.
And it kind of lays the groundwork for future success.
So it's like you've weathered the storm.
Yeah.
You've reached safe harbor. But what happens when we face, setbacks?
Right.
Challenges. How do we push through and come through those tough times?
That is a really great question, and it's one that I think we should spend some time discussing as we delve deeper into advanced everyday English.
I like it.
But for now, I want to shift our focus to something a little more extraordinary, the realm of the unheard of.
Ooh, okay, the unheard of. I like that.
Yes, it refers to something so rare.
Right.
Or so unusual that it defies our expectations.
Like stumbling upon, I don't know, like a hidden oasis
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the middle of the desert.
It's a moment of surprise,
Yeah.
and wonder. It challenges our assumptions.
Okay. So how do we respond to the unheard of? Do we embrace it? Or do we, kind of cling to those familiar ways of thinking?
I think that's a really interesting question, and honestly, it's one that we could probably spend hours debating.
I bet.
But for now, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about a phrase that often walks this, fine line between humor and hurt feelings. To give someone stick.
To give someone stick.
Okay. It basically means to tease
Right.
or make fun of someone.
Right.
But it can so easily backfire if you're not careful.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, those friends who they love to poke fun at you,
Yeah.
but sometimes their jokes hit a little too close to home.
They do, yeah.
So how do we master the art of, giving stick without causing offense?
That is the million-dollar question. It all comes down to understanding your audience.
Right.
Their sense of humor, the context.
Right.
Sometimes, a little bit of teasing can strengthen a bond,
Sure.
but sometimes it can create, tension and resentment.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance.
It is.
Okay. Speaking of delicate, let's
Yeah.
talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of being stuck in a state of limbo. Okay.
Up in the air.
Up in the air.
Yes.
That frustrating feeling of not knowing what's going to happen.
Right. The source mentions it in the context of, a business decision
Right.
that hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay.
And it leaves everybody, feeling a bit uncertain, a bit anxious.
Yeah.
It's like waiting for those exam results.
Ugh.
You're on edge. You're anticipating the outcome, but you have no control over it.
You're just stuck
You are.
in this holding pattern.
Yeah.
So is there anything we can do about that?
Well, that's another really good question, and it's one that we can unpack further as we explore advanced everyday English.
Okay. Sounds good.
But for now, I want to shift our attention to another situation that can be equally unsettling,
Okay.
being out of one's depth.
Ooh, I've been there.
It's like being thrown in the deep end
Right.
when you don't know how to swim.
Exactly.
You're surrounded by all these experts,
Yeah.
and they're speaking a language that you barely understand.
Oh, I know that feeling. But is it always a negative experience?
Well, that's a question worth exploring.
Yeah, it is.
But for now, I want to talk about the more practical side of things.
Yeah.
How do we navigate those moments when we feel out of our depth?
Right.
Do we try to, fake it till we make it?
Yeah.
Or do we admit our limitations?
And seek help.
Exactly. Ask for guidance. But, we shouldn't forget about those who are often tasked with those, less glamorous jobs.
Right.
The dog's bodies of the world.
Yeah, the dog's body.
Our source reminds us that even those seemingly, menial roles
Right.
can be such valuable learning experiences.
Okay.
Remember the story of, Ted Davies, the football club dog's body,
Yeah.
who went on to become a successful manager.
Right. He climbed the ladder.
He did. And, those early experiences, even though they weren't glamorous,
Right.
they gave him such a strong foundation
Okay.
and a really deep understanding of, how the organization worked.
It's like those tasks were like secret training missions.
They were preparing him for bigger things.
Yeah. Maybe those less glamorous jobs are just hidden opportunities.
They could be.
All right. Speaking of opportunities, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of finally grasping a complex concept, to get one's head around something.
Yes, that aha moment.
Yes. When the fog clears,
Yeah.
it all makes sense.
It clicks.
It does. So how do we get to that point? Is it intelligence? Persistence?
Yeah.
Just dumb luck?
Another great question, and I think it's one that deserves a lot more discussion.
Okay.
But for now, I want to shift gears a little bit.
All right.
And talk about a phrase that really does require a leap of faith
Okay.
to give someone the benefit of the doubt.
Ooh. The benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Choosing to trust someone, even when you have those nagging doubts.
You do.
So when is it wise to do that?
When should we trust our gut?
Right. Proceed with caution.
Yeah. Our source highlights the importance of, extending trust, but also warns us against being, too naive,
Right.
too easily manipulated. It's like walking a tightrope.
It is.
You need balance, but you also need to be aware of the potential pitfalls.
Okay. Finding that sweet spot. That's tough. Speaking of tricky, let's talk about a phrase that's all about, playful teasing,
All right.
lighthearted banter.
Okay.
To take the mickey out of someone.
Oh, take the mickey.
Yeah, that's a very British expression.
It is.
It's about poking fun,
Yeah.
but not being mean.
No, not malicious.
Right. So how do we walk that line?
Well, like any kind of humor.
Right.
It's about being mindful of the other person's sensitivities.
Right.
And, not crossing that line into bullying or cruelty.
So it's like friendly sparring.
It is.
You're aiming for those playful jabs,
Yeah.
not a knockout punch. All right. Speaking of time, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of being completely absorbed,
Okay.
to lose track of time.
Oh, lose track of time.
We've all been there.
We have.
You're engrossed in a good book,
Right.
or you're having this amazing conversation,
Yeah.
and then boom, suddenly hours have gone by.
They just disappear.
It's like stepping into a time warp.
It is.
You emerge feeling refreshed, but also kind of disoriented.
Right. Like, where did the time go?
Exactly. But is losing track of time always a good thing? Or is it sometimes a sign that, we're avoiding something important?
That is a really good question. And to be honest, I think it's one that requires a lot more thought and consideration.
Yeah.
But for now, I want to shift our attention to another aspect of communication,
Okay.
the unintended consequences of our actions.
Ooh, the unintended consequences.
Because sometimes, we say or do things
Right.
without fully realizing the impact they might have.
Right. Like those ripple effects.
Exactly. And, the word unwittingly captures that perfectly.
Okay. Unwittingly.
Doing something without realizing the full consequences.
Oh.
The source gives an example of, someone unwittingly leaving another person stranded
Oh, no.
in a really chaotic situation.
Well, that's a tough one.
It is, yeah. A classic case of, good intentions gone wrong.
It really is. So how do we avoid those kinds of, unwitting blunders?
Well, I think that's a question we need to delve into a bit deeper.
Okay.
As we explore the world of advanced everyday English.
Sounds good.
But first, I want to focus on a phrase that really does capture that feeling of finally letting go.
Okay.
Of something that's been weighing on our minds.
Right.
To get something out of one's system.
Get it out of your system. I love that feeling.
Oh, it is such a relief.
It's like purging those, toxic thoughts or emotions
Exactly.
that have been building up.
Just clogging up your mental space.
Yeah. But is it always a good idea to, get things out of our system?
Well, it depends. Our source talks about, the benefits of expressing yourself authentically, but also, it acknowledges that sometimes, it can lead to hurt feelings.
Right.
Or unintended consequences. It's like handling, a really delicate piece of china.
You have to be careful.
You do. You don't want to drop it.
Okay, so it's all about finding that balance.
It is.
All right. Speaking of delicate situations, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of, I don't know, unease, instability,
Okay.
unrest.
Unrest. Yeah.
We often use that to describe, social or political turmoil.
Right. When tensions are high,
Yeah.
people are on edge. The source actually mentions unrest in the context of, a protest.
Okay.
That escalated into violence.
Wow.
It's a reminder that, when frustrations reach a boiling point, things can spiral out of control
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
It's like watching a pot of water
Yeah.
slowly heat up.
Yeah.
And then suddenly boil over. So what can we do to, address those root causes of unrest? Prevent those situations from escalating? Is it dialogue?
It's a really good question. It's a big question.
It is.
And to be honest, it's one that we could probably spend hours unpacking.
Yeah, for sure.
But for now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about a phrase that's all about financial abundance. To rake it in.
Oh, rake it in. Okay.
Yeah. Evoke those images of,
Money, money, money.
scooping up piles of cash.
Yeah. A true sign of success.
It is. But is raking it in just about money?
Good question. Or is there more to it?
I think there might be. And I think it's something that we should definitely explore further as we continue our deep dive into advanced everyday English.
Okay, let's do it.
But first, I want to talk about another aspect of language learning.
Okay.
And that is the importance of going beyond just, skimming the surface.
Skimming the surface,
Yeah.
right? Like reading the Wikipedia entry instead of the whole book.
Exactly. The source really does emphasize the importance of engaging with information on a deeper level. Delving into those details,
Right.
uncovering the hidden layers of meaning. It's like the difference between looking at a painting from afar
Yeah.
and studying it up close.
You get so much more out of it.
You do. It's about depth of understanding.
That's where the real insights lie.
Oh, why?
Okay, speaking of insights, let's talk about a word that captures that feeling of utter astonishment.
All right.
Gobsmacked.
Gobsmacked.
It's like being struck by lightning.
It is.
You're just speechless.
Yeah. You're in shock.
The source uses gobsmacked to describe someone's reaction to, an unexpected turn of events.
Right.
Pure surprise and disbelief.
Exactly. Like, winning the lottery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You're happy,
You are.
but you're also in shock.
You are. It's a lot to process. But, let's not forget about those things that were once all the rage,
Right.
but have now kind of faded into obscurity.
Okay.
The source uses the term passé
Passé. Yeah.
to describe something that's just, outdated.
No longer fashionable. Exactly.
It's like, that old song
Yeah.
that you used to love.
Right.
But now it just makes you cringe a little.
Makes you cringe. Passé evokes that sense of nostalgia.
It does.
But also, the recognition that times change.
Right.
Tastes change.
What was once cool is now, yeah.
Now it's just embarrassing.
Yeah. Like looking at old photos of yourself.
Exactly. What was I thinking?
Okay, speaking of cringeworthy, let's talk about a word that really captures that feeling of, visceral disgust.
Oh, okay.
Squeamish.
Squeamish. Yeah.
It's like, you see something gross.
right.
You just want to look away.
You want to run away.
The source uses squeamish to describe, someone's reaction to the sight of blood
Yeah.
or gore. It's like that, ugh,
It's that physical reaction.
Yeah, it's like your stomach is doing flips
It is.
and you just want to escape. So is squeamishness just a physical reaction? Well, that's a really interesting question. And I think it's one that we could discuss at length.
For sure.
But for now, I want to shift our focus to something a little bit different.
Okay.
The importance of not dwelling on negative experiences.
Ooh. Not dwelling on the negative.
Yeah. Because we all do it, don't we?
We do.
We get stuck in those loops,
right.
replaying past mistakes,
Yeah.
worrying about, what might happen.
The what ifs.
The what ifs. And our source really emphasizes the importance of focusing on the present,
Right.
letting go of the past.
Easier said than done sometimes.
It is. But dwelling on negativity, it just drains our energy.
It does.
And it prevents us from embracing those new opportunities.
It's like carrying around a backpack full of rocks.
It is. It weighs you down.
Okay. So we need to lighten our mental load.
We do.
Focus on what we can control.
Absolutely. But sometimes, even when we're trying to be, positive, we need a little extra boost.
Yeah, we do.
Our source suggests that we might need to psych ourselves up.
Oh, psych ourselves up. Okay.
Yeah.
Like a pep talk.
Exactly. For a challenging task or, a difficult situation,
All right.
It could involve visualization,
Right.
positive affirmations,
Okay.
or even just, taking a few deep breaths.
Right. And reminding ourselves that we can do it.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner strength.
Okay. So we've psyched ourselves up,
We have,
but then we encounter, resistance or opposition.
right?
So when do we stand our ground
Yeah.
and when do we back down?
That is a tough one. And our source talks about the strategic importance of, knowing when to fight
Okay.
and knowing when to retreat.
Makes sense.
Because sometimes backing down, it's not a sign of weakness.
Right.
It's a strategic move
Yeah.
to preserve your energy for, more important battles.
It's like choosing your battles wisely.
It is. It's a valuable skill.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that can, drive us a little crazy, let's talk about a phrase that captures that feeling of utter exasperation.
Right?
To do one's head in.
Oh, to do one's head in.
That moment when you're ready to scream into a pillow.
You are.
What is going on?
The source uses it to describe, that feeling of just being utterly overwhelmed,
Yeah,
driven to distraction.
like your brain is on overload.
It is. It needs a break.
Yeah. It's like trying to, assemble that piece of furniture.
Right.
Where the instructions make absolutely no sense.
Exactly. And you just want to give up.
You just want to chuck the whole thing out the window.
Yeah.
So how do we manage those moments when, our heads are about to explode?
Well, that's a great question.
It is.
And it's one that we'll definitely unpack further as we continue to explore advanced everyday English.
Okay.
But for now, I want to focus on a word that captures that feeling of, something being ongoing
Okay.
and seemingly inescapable,
Right.
perpetual.
Perpetual.
Okay.
Like, I don't know, that dripping faucet
Yeah,
that you can never, quote, seem to fix.
exactly. A constant source of annoyance.
Yeah. It's like a little reminder that, some problems just don't go away.
They don't. But is perpetual always negative?
Ooh, good question. Could it be positive?
I think it can be. It can also be used to describe things that are enduring,
Okay.
reliable, like, the perpetual cycle of the seasons.
Right.
Or, the perpetual bond of friendship.
So it's all about perspective.
It is.
Sometimes what seems like a curse is actually, a blessing.
It can be.
Okay. Well, speaking of things that can be both good, and speaking of things that could be both good and bad, let's talk about a word that captures that feeling of, disappointment or even pity. Pathetic.
Pathetic.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. It's like, I don't know, like watching someone trip and fall and you feel bad for them.
Right.
But you also can't help but chuckle a little bit. Yeah, it's like, the source uses it to describe a performance that's just so lacking in effort or skill that it's almost painful to watch.
Right.
It's that, like someone tells a joke and it just falls flat.
Yeah.
And you just cringe hoping they'll recover.
Yeah. But is it ever okay to call someone or something pathetic? Isn't that a little harsh?
It really depends. Sometimes, it's used in a more lighthearted way. Like
Yeah.
if you're, teasing a friend about their terrible cooking.
Sure.
But when it's directed at someone's efforts or character, then yeah, it can be pretty cutting.
Okay. So we have to be careful.
We do. Words can have a big impact.
Speaking of impact,
Yeah.
let's talk about a phrase that's all about challenging someone's authority.
Oh, yeah.
To call their bluff.
Call their bluff. That's a bold move.
It is.
Our source uses it in a situation where one person suspects that the other person is exaggerating or lying about their position.
Right.
It's basically saying, I don't believe you. Prove it.
Right.
It's a risky move.
It is.
Because if you're wrong, you could lose a lot.
Yeah.
But if you're right, you gain the upper hand.
So it's a gamble.
It is.
Okay, so high stakes. Let's move on to a word that has a much more positive connotation.
Okay.
Adept.
Adept, yeah.
That suggests, a high level of skill.
Right, like expertise.
It's like, I don't know, that friend who can solve a Rubik's Cube in seconds,
Yeah, exactly.
or that colleague who can just whip up a brilliant presentation
Right.
and make it look so easy.
You do.
Our source actually highlights someone who's adept at, reaping the rewards of their actions.
So it's not just skill.
Right.
It's also, shrewdness.
Right.
Strategic thinking.
Like they know how to, make things happen.
Yeah.
But even the most adept individuals can get caught up in a frenzy every now and then.
Oh, a frenzy. Yes.
Right, that feeling of, I don't know, uncontrolled energy.
Right, like a whirlwind.
Yeah, whirlwind of emotions.
Yeah. Factions.
Like being swept away by a current.
It is a bit like that, isn't it? You lose control.
You're just along for the ride.
You are.
But frenzies,
Yeah.
they don't last forever. Eventually things start to settle down.
They do.
And we enter this period of, well, dwindling,
Dwindling. Yeah, it suggests, a gradual decrease.
like a fading light.
Exactly.
Or, I don't know, a melting ice cube.
Yeah, that feeling of something slowly slipping away.
Right. Like the end of summer.
It is a bit like that.
But even in the midst of decline, we can experience, those sudden upsurges
Oh, yeah, an upsurge. Yeah.
of energy or activity.
It's that sudden increase.
It's like a wave crashing on the shore.
It is.
Or, I don't know, a geyser erupting.
That feeling of, momentum building.
It's like your favorite band announcing a reunion tour.
Exactly. Suddenly you're full of excitement.
Yeah, yeah. But change doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it's a more gradual process,
Right.
Phasing in new ideas or practices.
Phasing in, yeah. It suggests a more deliberate approach.
Right, well planned.
It's about creating a smooth transition.
Right. Minimize the disruption.
Exactly.
It's like easing into a cold swimming pool.
It is a bit like that, isn't it?
Dip your toes in first.
Yeah.
But sometimes we also need to phase out those things that aren't serving us anymore.
Phase out. Yeah, that suggests a gradual removal.
Right.
Like, slowly reducing our dependence on fossil fuels.
Okay.
Or discontinuing a product.
It's like decluttering our lives.
It is. Getting rid of the old to make way for the new.
But change, whether it's phased in or out, can sometimes leave us feeling a bit, well, jaded.
Jaded, yeah. It's that sense of, weariness or disillusionment.
Right, like you've just had enough.
You have. The sparkle's gone.
Yeah. It's like eating too much candy.
Yeah, exactly.
It was fun at first,
It was.
but now you just feel sick. So how do we combat that jaded feeling? Do we need, like, a complete life overhaul?
That's a really good question. I mean, that's probably a topic for a whole other deep dive.
Yeah.
It is.
But for now, I want to focus on a word that I think is often used in a very positive light.
Okay.
Pledge.
Pledge.
It suggests a very solemn promise.
Right.
Like the oath a doctor takes, or the commitment a couple makes on their wedding day.
A vow.
Yeah. It implies that deep sense of responsibility.
Okay.
The source mentions a politician making a pledge to support up-and-coming politicians.
Right.
And it really does highlight the importance of mentorship
Right.
and guidance, especially for those future leaders.
Yeah, it's about paying it forward. And, I think as we wrap up our deep dive into advanced everyday English, that's a perfect note to end on.
It is.
It's not just about, sounding smarter or more sophisticated.
Yeah.
It's about using language to connect, to inspire, to make a real difference.
Absolutely. And remember, this journey of language learning, it never really ends.
It doesn't.
There's always more to discover, always more to learn.
I like that.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep having fun with it. This has been another fascinating deep dive into advanced everyday English. See you next time for more linguistic adventures.